Every summer, millions of American homeowners kneel down in their gardens and pull this plant out by the fist. They bag it, they bin it, they spray it with whatever kills things fastest. And then they drive to the pharmacy and spend $30 on a magnesium bottle that their body barely absorbs. The plant they just threw away contains more bioavailable magnesium than that bottle. More than the capsules. More than the powders. More than anything behind that pharmacy counter. And it comes back every single year without you planting a single seed. I am not talking about some exotic greenhouse herb. I am talking about the plant growing in the crack of your driveway right now. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you exactly what this plant is, where it has been hiding in plain sight, why 3 generations of Americans forgot it existed, and one preservation method documented by the federal government in 1943 that almost no living person practices today. You do not need land. You do not need a greenhouse. You do not need any gardening experience whatsoever. You need a 5-gallon bucket, regular dirt from your backyard, and about 10 minutes this weekend. That is the whole entry fee. Stay with me because what I found buried in old agricultural records genuinely changed how I feed my own family. And by the end of this video, it will change how you look at your garden forever. The plant is called purslane. Before you click away and tell me you have already heard of it, wait. Because what most people know about purslane is about 5% of the actual story. Most people know it as a weed, a nuisance, something that shows up uninvited between the tomatoes every July. What most people do not know is that this same plant was a deliberate garden crop in virtually every American household until the middle of the 20th century. It was sold at city markets. It was listed in seed catalogs. It was dried and stored for winter the same way families stored beans and corn. And then, in roughly 1 generation, it vanished from the American table entirely. Not because it stopped growing. It never stopped growing. You are probably looking at it right now without knowing what it is. It vanished because someone decided it was more profitable for you not to know about it. Let me give you the science first, so you understand what we are dealing with. In 1992, researchers at a major American university published a peer-reviewed study measuring the mineral content of wild purslane harvested across multiple regions of the country. The magnesium numbers stopped them cold. 100 grams of fresh purslane leaves, roughly what you could hold loosely in one hand, delivered approximately 68 milligrams of fully bioavailable magnesium. Bioavailable means your body actually uses it, not the oxide form in cheap supplements that passes through your system before it does anything. The kind your cells can actually put to work. A standard magnesium capsule from the drugstore contains around 100 milligrams on the label. But bioavailability on most commercial magnesium products runs between 4 and 30% depending on the form. Run that math yourself. A good handful of fresh purslane, maybe 150 grams with your dinner, competes directly with what you paid $30 for at the vitamin counter. And that same handful also delivers something no supplement bottle has ever managed to replicate. Purslane contains more alpha-linolenic acid, the plant-based omega-3 fatty acid, than any other leafy green ever formerly tested. Over 400 milligrams per 100 grams of fresh weight. Spinach has almost none. Kale has almost none. The $10 bag of mixed greens from the grocery store has almost none. Purslane has 400. The only land-based food that comes close is flaxseed. And you cannot walk out your back door in July and eat flaxseed raw in a bowl with vinegar and salt. You can do exactly that with purslane. Purslane has fed human beings for thousands of years across nearly every continent. Ancient Persian physicians used it. Greek farmers ate it. It crossed the Atlantic with European settlers and took root immediately because American soil suited it perfectly. By the time the United States was a functioning country, purslane was already established in kitchen gardens, from Massachusetts to Virginia. Early American agricultural writers described it as a pot herb of great value, rich in cooling minerals, widely used in the summer months when heat exhaustion was a genuine daily threat to men working in fields. They did not have the word magnesium yet, but they understood the effect. The men who ate certain plants in July did not cramp up in the afternoon heat. They noticed, they kept eating the plant. The plant appeared in official United States government publications as late as 1943. A federal handbook distributed to over 20 million American households during the war years listed purslane specifically as an emergency green. The document described it as a nutritious plant of exceptional mineral content, easily cultivated in any soil, and preservable by traditional fermentation for winter use. 20 million households received that document. 1 generation later, the same federal agricultural system was publishing eradication guides, Not because porcelain became dangerous. Not because new research discredited it. Because it does something no company can build a business model around. It reseeds itself. Plant it once, and you have it forever. One mature porcelain plant produces somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 seeds in a single growing season. Each seed remains viable in the soil for decades. You never buy seed again. Your children never buy seed. Your grandchildren walk out into the same patch of dirt and harvest the same plant without knowing you started it 40 years earlier. A plant like that makes families quietly self-sufficient, and quietly self-sufficient families buy fewer supplements, fewer laxatives, fewer heartburn tablets, fewer magnesium bottles. That is not a business opportunity. That is a business problem. So the plant was reclassified. Weed, nuisance, spray it, kill it, move on. And it worked. Ask anyone under 50 what porcelain is. Most of them will tell you, it is that thing their parents used to pull out of the flower bed. They have no idea they were pulling out one of the most mineral-dense foods that grows freely on this continent. Here is the practical part. And I want to be very clear that this works whether you have a half-acre garden or a fire escape in a city apartment. Porcelain does not require good soil. It actually prefers poor soil. Rich potting mixes can weaken it. Regular dirt from your backyard is ideal. Take any container, at least 6 inches deep, a 5-gallon bucket, an old planter, a cracked pot from the shed. Fill it with plain garden soil. Not amended, not fertilized, just dirt. Scatter porcelain seeds across the surface. Do not bury them. They need light contact with soil to germinate. Press them down gently with your palm. Water once, then leave it alone. Within 10 to 14 days you will see green. Within 30 days you will have leaves worth harvesting. Within 60 days, that plant will have already dropped the next generation of seeds into the same container without any help from you. If you do not want to order seeds, you may not need to. Walk along any untreated roadside, any neglected corner of a parking lot, any unmowed strip of land in July or August. Look low to the ground for a fleshy, succulent-looking plant with small rounded leaves and reddish stems. That is almost certainly. Pinch off the small dark seed pods, carry them home in your pocket, and scatter them in your container. Cost to you, 0. The young leaves and stems go straight into salads. The flavor is mild and slightly tangy, almost lemony, with a satisfying crunch. A half cup of fresh porcelain with dinner 3 or 4 times a week is a meaningful mineral contribution to your diet. Older plants get chopped into soups and stews during the last few minutes of cooking. They thicken the broth slightly because of the natural mucilage in the stems. You can also pickle porcelain the same way you pickle cucumbers. White vinegar, garlic, a pinch of salt. Jars last on a cool shelf for well over a year. And then there is the dried preparation, which is what most people completely miss. In late summer, cut the whole plant back, hang it upside down in a dry spot out of direct sun for about 10 days. Once it is fully dry, crumble the leaves into a glass jar and seal it. 1 level teaspoon of that dried powder in a cup of hot water, taken in the morning before coffee, is a mineral-dense start to the day that costs you nothing beyond the 10 minutes you spent harvesting it. This is the part I want you to pay close attention to, because it is the piece of this story that took me the longest to find, and it is the piece that most people doing videos on porcelain never mention at all. Old agricultural documents from the early 20th century, particularly those focused on Pennsylvania German and Appalachian farming communities, describe a cold fermentation method for preserving the minerals in porcelain through the winter months. The logic was simple. Fresh greens are gone by October, but your body's need for magnesium, potassium, and calcium does not take a winter break. So families found a way to pull those minerals out of the plant and into water, where they would keep for months. Here is how it works. At the end of the growing season, sometime in late September, harvest the whole plant. Roots, stems, leaves, seed pods, everything. Chop it coarsely. Pack it firmly into a half-gallon glass jar. Fill the jar with filtered water or clean well water. Cap it loosely, not airtight. Set it somewhere cool and dark. A basement shelf works perfectly. A garage in the northern states works through October. Leave it for exactly 21 days. During those 3 weeks, a slow natural fermentation draws the minerals out of every part of the plant and into the water. The liquid will bubble gently in the first week and then settle. It will turn a pale yellow-green. It will smell faintly sour and clean, like a good pickle brine. At the end of 3 weeks, strain the liquid through a cotton cloth into a clean jar. Seal it and keep it in the coolest spot you have. 1 tablespoon of that liquid in a glass of cold water every morning, 5 days a week, from November through April. That is it. That is the whole winter protocol. Families in isolated rural communities used this to maintain mineral intake through months when no fresh plant food was available. The method appears in official government agricultural documentation from the first half of the 20th century, and then, like the plant itself, quietly disappears from the public record. A correct ferment smells sour and grassy. It should never smell of rot or sulfur. If you see black mold, discard and start over. A white film on the surface is harmless wild yeast. Skim it and continue. 1/2 gallon jar will carry one person through the winter months. 2 jars covers a couple comfortably. Fresh purslane has uses beyond the dinner plate that was standard knowledge in rural American households, within living memory, and have almost completely disappeared. The first is a drawing poultice. Bruise a handful of fresh leaves in a clean cloth. Hold the pulp against a minor wound, insect sting, or inflammation for a few hours. The natural mucilage in the plant has documented drawing and soothing properties. This was standard first response practice in communities far from town doctors. The second is a simple digestive tea. A loose cup of fresh leaves steeped in just boiled water for 7 minutes, strained and drunk warm before bed. Magnesium relaxes smooth muscle. The mucilage coats and soothes. If you have ever stared at the ceiling at midnight with a restless stomach, this is worth trying before you reach for anything from the medicine cabinet. The third is the raw salad with fat. This matters nutritionally. The omega-3 fatty acids in purslane are fat-soluble, meaning your body absorbs significantly more of them when you eat the plant alongside any healthy fat. Olive oil, a soft cheese, an avocado, even a small amount of butter. Do not eat purslane dry if you want the full benefit. The fourth is the seed. Purslane seeds are tiny, almost invisible, but they have documented nutritional density. In traditional Mediterranean communities, purslane seed was ground and blended into bread flour at roughly 1 part seed to 10 parts wheat. The resulting bread was darker, denser, and nutritionally richer than ordinary wheat bread. It was not a delicacy. It was everyday food for working people who lived by the records of the era. Into their late 80s, with very low rates of the chronic diseases that define modern aging, Americans spend over $1 billion a year on magnesium supplements alone. Every single one of those purchases represents a family that lost access to knowledge their great-grandparents had without thinking twice about it. The plant did not disappear. It is in your garden right now. It is growing in the sidewalk crack outside your front door. It has been waiting patiently in the soil for you to remember what it is. A 1943 government handbook told your great-grandmother to grow it as a survival food. A decade or two later, the same system was funding campaigns to eliminate it. What changed was not the plant. What changed was who stood to profit from your forgetting. That is the arc of this story. From a kitchen staple that crossed the Atlantic with the first settlers, to a weed in a spray bottle commercial in a single generation. The knowledge did not die. It just stopped being passed down. You are watching this video. Now you have it again. Plant purslane this spring. Let it go to seed in late summer. Harvest it fresh through June, July, and August. Dry it for winter tea. And in September, make your first jar of the fermented mineral water, the way rural families did, long before supplements existed. That is how you quietly step back from an industry that sells you in a bottle what grows freely in the dirt under your feet. Now, before you go, I want to ask you one thing. Have you ever pulled purslane out of your garden thinking it was a weed? Leave a comment below. Tell me where you grew up, and whether anyone in your family ever grew this plant on purpose. I read every single one. And if this kind of forgotten, practical knowledge is what you are here for, subscribe. Because the next video covers something that has been sitting quietly in old homesteading records for over a century. A water preservation method used by isolated communities across the rural Midwest that requires no electricity, no refrigeration, and produces drinking water cleaner than what comes out of most modern taps. Almost nobody alive today knows how it works.